Hey there, Math Rock Stars. Let's take a look at adding and subtracting radicals. First thing to pay attention to if you're putting radicals together with addition and subtraction are the radicands themselves. So at the top of this page I have some examples of matching radicands where the number underneath the radical sign is the same. So the 5s or these 2s or these two x's. So the number or the combination of factors underneath the radicand have to be exactly the same. And if that's the case, you can combine the coefficients. If the radicands aren't the same, so here are two examples where the radicands are not the same. So unlike radicands, so here I'm looking at the 2 and the 50. They're not the same anymore, or 27 and 75. When the radicands don't match each other, then you're going to need to do some simplifying. So we'll look at those as well, but let's start off with the ones that are super easy, matching radicands. When you have matching radicands, all that has to happen is that you need to add the coefficients or subtract the coefficients. So add or subtract the coefficients. And you want to make sure that when you're doing that, you're paying attention to the signs of things. So for example, here, 9 radical 2 minus radical 2, you're subtracting. The other thing you want to make sure about is that the radicands are going to stay the same. Radicands stay the same. It's kind of like, stay the same. It's kind of like you're combining like terms. What I mean by this is if you were adding, say, 2x and 5x, combining like terms, 2x plus 5x, you would make the answer 7x, right? The x's would stay the same, and you would just be combining the 2 and the 5. So let's just quickly do these. 2 radical 5 plus 10 radical 5 is going to be 12 radical 5. So I'm just adding the 2 and the 10. 9 radical 2 minus a radical 2. So there's that invisible 1 coefficient. Becomes 8 radical 2. And negative 5 radical 2x minus 4 radical 2x. So here's what's happening with that. I'm going negative 5 minus 4. I'm combining the coefficients. And I'm going to leave the radicand the same. I'm not going to touch that. And I'll end up with negative 9 times the square root of 2x. All right, so really easy. You're just going to add or subtract the coefficients, and you're going to leave the radicands alone. They'll stay exactly as they are. If you have unlike radicands, so these two down here at the bottom, we have to do a little bit of simplifying first of the radicands themselves. We're going to need to somehow break down the 50, for example, in this first one, and try to get a radical 2 as the radicand. So if I'm splitting up radical 50, I could turn that into radical 25 times radical 2, or 5 radical 2. And now my problem is 5 radical 2 plus 3 radical 2. The radicands are the same, so I can add the coefficients. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 radical 2 is my answer. And then the bottom one, negative 10 radical 75 minus 6 radical 27. So those are definitely not the same. Let's split them up. Radical 75, I could split up into radical 25 times radical 3, which becomes 5 times radical 3. And don't forget that coefficient out in the front. Right, I'm still multiplying by negative 10, which would give me negative 50 radical 3. So now I've taken negative 10 radical 75, and I've rewritten it as negative 50 radical 3. Well, my radicands still aren't the same, so let's try breaking apart the 27. I'll make that radical 9 times radical 3, which would become 3 radical 3. And once again, I need to bring down that negative 6 that I'm multiplying by. And I'll end up with negative 18 radical 3. So I've taken negative 6 times radical 27, and I've rewritten it as negative 18 radical 3. And now we can put them together. So I've got negative 50 radical 3 minus 18 radical 3, or negative 68, right? Negative 50 minus 18 is negative 68 radical 3.